Hi again, guys. I'm back for another video. In our last video series we did a Ghoul Arcane Blade. We got decently far, all things considered, but he sort of fell apart. I screwed up his build, which can be kind of a problem if you're just learning a class or if you're not very good at a class. Like, I'm not very good at Arcane Blade. I love the class. It's one of my favorite ones to play, but I'm just terrible at playing them. So we're going to do something a little simpler this time, and what I'm thinking we're going to do, I might go with Berserker. The rogue classes are always fun. I might go with an alchemist. Let's see. You know, I'm going to go with a berserker for now. And let's see, what race should I go for this character. You know what? Let's check out the Yeek starter zone. I'm feeling saucy. Yeek is one of the bonus races you get. You unlock it when you save the Yeek Wayist from Subject Z, and they're kind of a challenge race. They have pretty bad starting stats, but they have really amazing racials. They get -3 to strength, -2 to dexterity, -5 to constitution, so your 3 prime statistics as a berserker are horrible. They get a bonus to willpower and cunning, which raises their stamina and their crit for a melee character. They also have only 7 life per level, the lowest of any race by a lot. But as a bonus, they get confusion resistance, which is the hardest resistance to get, and they get a experience bonus rather than a penalty. So they level much faster than everybody else, which means they can out-level certain dungeons sooner, and generally most classes sort of scale and snowball into being unstoppable in the 30s. So the faster you get there, the easier the time you'll have with dungeons like Dreadfell, where even though things scale alongside you, the scaling that they have sort of cuts off more at a more reasonable point in your character's lifespan. We're going to name him Yankees. So, the Yeek character, unlike most other characters, the Yeek actually starts in his hometown. I don't know exactly why darkgod set it up this way, but if I had to take a guess, it's probably so you don't sort of have to get forced to leave behind one dungeon or the other, in case you're not comfortable with doing that one first. We also get very few stats because we had to start with extra stats to meet our stat requirements for our starting talents and everything. We'll put another point into Stunning Blow. It's a two-handed weapon attack that stuns for X number of turns. The stun chance increases with strength, which is what we're going to be putting almost all of our points into. Stunning Blow is amazing. On any character who you're going to use it on, you're going to want to max it right away. Eventually, I believe the stun on it lasts longer than the actual cooldown, so you can keep things chain stunned. It's just a really good ability overall. We'll put another point, we'll take this other point and put it into Rush. We're not going to have any early stamina problems, so quick recovery isn't immediately necessary, but we will want to get fast metabolism and Spell Shield eventually. On the Yeek racial side, they have some really good racials. The first is a mind control ability. It's an auto-death attack. It won't work on elite enemies, but it's very useful in the starting area. The next one after that gives you a bonus to confusion and silence immunities per level. And with this, the saved Yeek bonus, when you save the Yeek from the Shadow Blade, and the default racial bonus, you actually have 100% confusion immunity just from racials and free quest items, just nice. And then Quicken, which is the best racial talent in the game, it gives you 15% global speed when max, which is incredible. That's movement speed, attack speed, spellcasting speed, etc. The last one summons Yeek Mindslayers. I've never gotten this far with a Yeek character before, so I wouldn't be able to tell you if it's useful or not. And we don't really have anything right now we can spend this other talent point on, so I'm just going to hold on to it. So the starting town of Urk has a bunch of different shopkeepers and stuff in it, but we're not going to mess around with those quite yet. We don't have any money to spend anyway, so all we'd be doing is making sure the shops got rolled at level 1. There's 2 dungeons here. There's the Lair of Murgle, and there's the Richest Grounds, and I prefer the Richest Grounds. There's also this entrance over here, a tunnel to Maj'Eyal, but we're not going to go through there quite yet. The Richest Tunnels is like the I don't know what other dungeon to compare it to, but it's very compact and sort of cramped, which can actually be a very good thing. In fact, it's kind of important that it has this sort of layout because you can get swarmed very easily in here. And the Yeek is very fragile early on, having less HP than pretty much anyone else, even as the Berserker. And every time we have it on cooldown, or off cooldown, we're going to want to use this Dominant Will ability, because Dominant Will basically one-shots any enemy you cast it on, who you successfully manage to cast it on. And it doesn't always work, but when it does, it can even the odds substantially, give you time to heal, take out a powerful enemy, and use that powerful enemy to take out other enemies. The duration on it's not great, and the cooldown on it's pretty long, but it's a lifesaver, and it's really important to use it constantly in the starting area. Yeah, you see our mind-controlled Rich there just went by and killed one of the slightly weaker enemies, so that saved us the trouble of having to do either. Now, I don't know if you get experience for anything your Rich slaves kill. I do know you get experience for the actual act of mind-controlling them, since it counts as you getting a kill. Okay, gain another level. Get a point in Stunning Blow, take a point in Weapons Mastery for some extra damage. Now, we always have to be careful in the Rich's Tunnels because we're so weak, and because the enemies here are relatively strong, this can be a really, really dangerous dungeon to screw up in. The flame spitters especially, like if you're down a long corridor and they just start pelting you, you're going to easily die before you can get to safety. Just wear these random things we found for a little extra armor. Really get to love that mind control in here. We just leveled again. Now you see the cooldown on it is now shorter than the actual stun duration. Now, with the richest tunnels, you don't always want to do them in the most direct order. You want to do this one, like, I'll do the first 2 floors of the dungeon, and then I will go back and do all of Murgle Lair, and then I'll come back for the 3rd floor, because the boss of the richest tunnels is much, much harder than the boss of Murgle Lair, but the random enemies inside Murgle Lair are much tougher than the rich. And as long as we continue to take it slowly in here, we shouldn't have any trouble as far as regular enemies go. Like I said, it's just the boss in this dungeon that's particularly difficult. The flame spitters can kill you pretty easily, but that's only if you sort of blunder into a passage. Now we've run into a little swarm room here, and this is just, we're going to handle this like we would any other large group of enemies, just much more slowly to compensate for the fact that the Yeek is really not very physically strong. Though our damage is getting up there. And we've leveled up again. Okay, we'll get another point into armor training and another point into combat accuracy. And we'll finish out stunning blow. This wasn't too bad, a little time consuming, but now that we're level 4, we're kind of getting to the point where we can shred these guys. Alright, now we're going to go over to the other dungeon before we continue any further in this one. Now, the Murgle layer is a little bit more of a pain. It's underwater, and you can't breathe underwater. You just get a slight bonus to how many rounds you can stay underwater. I can't remember if you can mind control rare enemies or not. It doesn't work on elite or undead. They just resisted it. It's not like it says that it didn't work at all, so I'll keep trying that on rares. It'd be nice if we could mind control those. We can't auto-explore here. We can just sort of move around. Thankfully, we have a lot of extra breath, but the game will bark at you if you try and rest on this floor or what have you. So it can be a little bit painful. You have to be very careful about how openly you walk into new areas as well, because if you just stumble into a room full of enemies, you can very easily get killed. Okay, that wasn't too bad. The manual exploration can be kind of tedious. Especially since you constantly have to stop on these little patches of bubbles to regenerate your air. Swap that over there. Sun infusions can be a nice little toy. They're not great long term, but in the early game you can use them on almost all of the bosses to basically disable them for long periods of the fight. It's really useful for Bill. Plus, yeah, pretty much every starter zone boss, I think, except the Scintillating Crystal, can be blinded, so it's a useful status effect early on, since most enemies aren't going to have the accuracy to hit you while you're blind, or while they're blind, rather. Okay, we're almost level 5, and we're almost down with Murgle, layer 1. There's the entrance to layer 2. You can tell I'm having a good game if I'm in the Murgle layer, and I find a water-breathing helmet. Happens every once in a while, but it doesn't seem like it's going to happen here. Ooh, ouch. Okay, we leveled up again. And now, the beautiful thing about Berserkers is they kind of start with okay strength and constitution, and those are the two primary stats they have. And while they're the biggest weaknesses of a Yeek character, the fact that you're putting points into them every level makes it a lot easier to deal with those weaknesses after you get past the first few levels. And stat bonuses to a class really only matter early on, or very late. I have 2 class points this level. Let's see. Take these 2. Get those little stamina and life regen passives. It makes things a little bit earlier or easier early on. And every little bit counts for a Yeek character. Because the early game is really the hardest part for them. Late game they also have some problems, but it's more because of their HP maximums than anything else then. And early on, they're fragile across the board. They have kind of poor saves. They take a lot of damage. They don't have a lot of top health. They don't do a lot of damage. Unless you're playing like a mind power-based caster, then they start just ridiculously, ludicrously overpowered, but end up weakening out over time. Like a Yeek Mind Slayer only gets like 3 HP a level. It's ridiculous. Thankfully, our damage is just constantly rising as we go through this. Every new level we gain, we get more strength and more physical power. And the nice thing is, Berserkers, because they use strength as their primary damage stat, and two-handed weapons get such a big bonus to strength, they can do some pretty high damage pretty early on. Ooh. Saved by blind there big time. This is class. Kinetic Shield, Shadow Combat. Shadow Blade? Alright. Okay, they're stunned. Still stunned. Got him. Dropped a two-hander. Let's see if it's any good for us. Oh, wow. Yeah. No, because when Windwearer is hit, not Windwearer hits. Oh, that's unfortunate. The weapon we got is okay. It's actually pretty good now to look at it. Alright, now let's go down to the next floor and kill the boss of this place. Okay. Couple of big rooms so far. Lots of little Yeek enemies. They never really explain what the Yeek are to the Yeeks, if those are also Yeeks, or if they just look like Yeeks, or if they're like aquatic Yeek cousins or something. Oh, I think we're right next to the boss. Yep. The boss is Murgle, the Yeek Lord. He's not very difficult. He has very little hit points, and he doesn't do a ton of damage, just to compensate for the fact that every Yeek player is going to have to fight him. And he's intended to be killed before the other one is, so he's a little bit on the weaker side. Got him stunned, we do not. Get this water air bubble for a second. Blind him again. He's a little hard to hit, so you'll probably end up missing a lot of your individual attacks on it if your accuracy isn't high. But otherwise, he's pretty easy to kill, as you probably saw. Didn't really drop a whole lot that's great for us. The Massive Stain Girdle can be good for any melee class, though, especially one low on hit points, so maybe we'll find the other piece for it later on. Under normal circumstances, I might stick around and clear this whole floor, but I hate the Murgle layer. I hate it a lot. Now, time to finish off the richest tunnels, which are a breath of fresh air after doing the underwater dungeon. Whereas the last boss of the Murgle layer is sort of a Mind Slayer type boss. He does a lot of psionic damage at ranged and things like that. The boss of the richest tunnels is just a basically a very large rich flame spitter. They hit really hard and they do a lot of individual single target damage. They're just a nasty monster overall. Usually if my Yeek character is going to get dismantled, that's what's going to do it. Yeah, Rich, Great Hive Mother. Doesn't have a lot of hit points, just like with the last boss, but this one summons additional enemies and shoots fireballs. It's just kind of a pain in the ass to deal with. I believe she's much more susceptible to stuns, though, which will make it pretty easy for this character to take care of her. Yep, she wasn't too bad. Found a pair of chitinous gloves. They're not going to be super useful to us, but I believe they add a little bit of fire damage to our attacks. No, I guess not. Stir resistance. That's not very good at all. Better than what we had, but not by a whole lot. Gained a couple of levels, haven't we? Let's see. And just start leveling that. Get a point to weapons mastery. Let's make that 2 points in weapons mastery. I like a lot of offense in my Berserker characters. And point spell shield. And 2 into Berserker. Alright, we're done with this dungeon as well. And we're almost level 9 when we're getting ready to get out of here. Slime covered. Ooh, that's amazing. Wow, what a nice find. Now, we can stop over here and there's rarely any good items here. It doesn't seem like a very good town overall to do shopping in. So I often don't even bother checking. But we'll take a quick look and see if anything special is in the shops here. I believe this one's a gem shop. There's a gloves and boot shop. Not a whole lot here. And let's see. Infusion shop, these are always nice to find. There's not a whole lot of them in the game, so Warriors Regeneration Infusion, that's good. And not quite as good. We'll take this Duelist's Regeneration Infusion as well. I'd really rather have 2 Regeneration Ruins over the Infusion, or the Sun Infusion right now, so we'll grab that as well, and look at a couple of the other the other NPCs. There's not, like I said, there's not much here. Not a lot of vendors. Oh wow! Can I afford that? It's a good weapon to have. I will not be able to afford it. It's okay though. We found a good weapon and another artifact. Wow. That was a surprising roll. I went through all that trouble talking about how nothing ever spawns in the shop, and we get 2 artifacts between 2 NPCs. Alright. Now what we're going to do from here is we're going to go to the last dungeon on the island, which is the tunnel to Maj'Eyal. And we get dumped out on the bottom floor of the ruined halfling complex, about a half of a map away from Subject Z. At this point, I recommend using your Rod of Recall and resting until you get ported out of the dungeon. This will teleport you out at the entrance to the halfling complex, rather than the place where you'd come into the dungeon at. And it's kind of important to do this because Subject Z is really hard to kill for pretty much anybody who comes out that isn't like an archmage, and even then you're kind of 50-50 on whether or not you're going to be able to pull it off. So I'm going to park my character in Dearth. I'm going to call this a video. I'll be back later on with further exploration of the newbies dungeons and the Dearth Arena event. Thanks for watching.